Welcome to Fashion Neurosis, Juergen Teller.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell me what you're wearing today and why you chose these clothes?
It's very important for me to be comfortable, because I kind of always in my mind, I could always be working, or I'm always working, and with what I'm doing is I have to be comfortable, whether it's kneeling down or crouching down or whatever. I just want to be comfortable in what I'm wearing, and I pretty much wear the same thing in a slightly different arrangement. I have a couple of those jumpers, same kind of jeans, same kind of trainers, and it just varies a bit.
I like the pink. It looks really good on you.
Thank you. That's what I thought.
You're one of the most famous photographers in the world, and especially for your work in fashion and your campaigns for Marc Jacobs and Vivienne Westwood. I used to wait for those Marc Jacobs campaigns almost like a new episode of a series. It was always so exciting, and I wondered what drew you to fashion.
Possibly the reason why you kind of liked them and why you were looking forward to seeing them as a series, as you say, is ultimately I'm interested in human beings, in people, and what they do, and it's a great vehicle for me to express what I'm thinking, and what is fashion for me. It's like a fantasy. It's like something you should be enjoy wearing, or a necessity when it's cold, and not be too serious about it. And I had fun with it. And I started to be getting involved in fashion really at the beginning. I started doing record covers, and that is really where a lot of fashion comes into, where actually fashion gets completely influenced by the music, by the musicians. And I started doing record covers, and I kind of asked myself, what is this? Is this a reportage? Is this a portrait? Is this a fashion photograph? It's kind of everything, or can be whatever you want it to be. But it really stems out of. I'm not so interested in fashion per se, but it's really the people who wear clothes. That's what I'm interested in.
Yeah, in the end, it's people who are interesting. They're the people that make clothes come to life. But you have something that's so kind of endearing as well about the way you bring those people into they're not just models, they are kind of the feeling that you want when you become obsessed with clothes. I suppose that's what I enjoy about your fashion portraiture. And when you were a child, did you have any obsessions with any particular clothes?
No. Not really, no.
I always had something that I fixated on because it seemed to bring order or some sort of fantasy of order into my life. And I wondered whether you had whether there was any attachment that started when you were a very young person.
I do remember having these, I can't remember how old I was. I kind of wanted to have this foxtail on my on my jeans, sort of thing. That were like the bad boys who were wearing those. They're kind of like complete stupid fashion accessory, but it meant like you were kind of like the moped driver, the cigarette smoker, and the kind of cool guy. That's the only fashion equipment I think I've ever thought of.
That's really good. How old were you when you had that?
I think I was still under the control of my parents, and they were obviously horrified. What the fuck I'm doing with this thing? And I don't know, like 11, 12, 13, something like that.
It seems very high fashion, weirdly, which is your milieu.
Of course, it was real fur at the time.
And you described picking up a camera when you were 18 and it feeling as though you could see for the first time. And I wondered, how did you see things differently from when you look through the lens?
It helped me to concentrate and focus, looking through this square thing behind the camera. You know, the viewfinder. It really helped me to shape and focus of something. And when you are young, you kind of like eat, drink, smell things, listen to music, but everything is sort of you're so young and so undeveloped kind of thing. Like the ears and the eyes, what you see, you're not trained, or you're so naive and so young. But looking through the square thing, it just suddenly helped me to focus, and I immediately knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a photographer, and I wanted to explore things, and it gave me a really excellent adventure in life.
Yeah, it's such an evocative description, because when I read that bit where you'd said that, I could feel like all the world, like all the shards coming together as if towards a magnet, and your idea of how crystal clear everything suddenly became. I suppose it's quite rare that anyone has those moments, and it's very interesting to hear about how succinct that was and how quickly that started, you know, and set you on your journey. You seem like quite an extrovert person, and you also grew up with an alcoholic father, and I always think there's a lot of shame associated with alcoholism, not to do with the drinking, but really to do with the feelings that are being suppressed by alcohol. And I wondered if you had an introvert side of yourself that you're protecting with your extrovert.
I am actually not so extrovert, I believe. I'm actually quite a shy person. But what needs to be done and what needs to be said needs to be done. You know, and I'm quite strong about it, and I have quite a strong backbone, and if my moral compass is correct, I consequently do this. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Mm. Oddly enough, maybe sometimes it's your clothes that make you seem like an extrovert, because when I've met you, you have always been quite shy, and you give a good impression of being, you know...
Because you associate it probably together with my work.
Yeah, absolutely. There's an unself-consciousness and a kind of urgency about your work and how you do things and how you cut to the chase.
I think if you're sort of confident, it's with everything really, if you're confident within yourself, you can do whatever you want in a way.
Yeah, I agree. You've talked a lot about your love of football, and one of my first guests on Fashion Neurosis was Eric Cantona, and I just had this thing that he had to be here, and he's my favourite player. I mean, I'm not that interested in football itself, but I am interested in certain players because they make it mean so much more. And I wondered if you had a favourite player.
Yeah, of course. That would be, without even thinking too much, it would be Ronaldinho. He was a Brazilian footballer, and he was like absolutely magic, because also it's you could see not just the skill of it, but the pure joy of playing and the tricks he did and the things we did. And you could also see the kind of like how fantastic it is and how life sort of changes. And after a couple of years of being just absolutely taking the world by storm, and then also getting involved like anybody else would be when you're rich and famous and fabulous, getting involved into the possibly drinking and women and everything else what comes within the world. And it's sort of fabulous that it's not only that it doesn't only exist football. It's rather becomes a bit sort of dull and boring how cooperative and serious this is. You know, it's all about money really. So it would be Ronaldinho for me.
Have you ever met him?
No, never met him. But I met quite a few footballers.
Have you photographed a lot of sportsmen? 'Cause
I have, just out of complete intrigue, and but it's very difficult because that it's such a serious business, and they can't really do so many things, but I enjoyed it.
And you don't retouch your photographs, which is pretty unusual in this day and age. And there's a way that you light things and that gives people this recognizable beauty that's associated with your work. And you make limbs look very beautiful, like in 70s photos when people didn't use retouching either. And I wondered if you're interested in glamour and what it means to you.
Well, first of all, it's not quite correct that I don't retouch. For many years now, I work in digital, so it comes as a raw file, and even if you have a color negative, you actually control of how things look like, how I want things to look like. So you are manipulating immediately something already, and but if you talk about like if I do self-portraits or if I photograph, if I would do a portrait of someone, I would, I photograph them so well. I subjectively believe this person should be seen by me. Then there's no need to be retouched. And there's people who want to be photographed by me and people who don't want to be photographed by me. It's completely fine. But the people who want feel secure within themselves, they are completely fine to be photographed by me. That's just quite easy. It's quite straightforward.
Because what I really like about your work is when you photograph people, you seem to bring out a kind of a spirit in them, like something wild, which when you're searching for that thing to capture, what's the instinct?
It is instinct, and I think I have a kind of like, it might sound funny or something, but I think I have a really good sense of, that I can feel and sense the aura around the person. And I think I'm really fast with assessing what would be good and how I should be photographing that person in the best possible way for me and for that person.
Yeah, it really comes across. It must be exhilarating to know that you've got that, even if it doesn't always work.
It always works. It has to always work.
Yeah.
That's the point, and then it's not like, and sometimes things, you mentioned that picture you've seen at the Paris bar in Berlin, the photograph I did of Saint Laurent, that literally took 15 seconds. And that was it. And I knew I had the photograph I needed to have. But sometimes it takes a long time. And sometimes you do this and you become... And I have to ask somebody to... I had this idea and I can't quite reach it. And I'm thinking of, this could be, why don't we try this? And it could be another session or another day and another day. And sometimes this takes a very long time. So you have to have patience and to yourself you have to say you haven't quite got it yet, and you have to work till you really have it. And you also have to be saying I think you have to just be honest. You think, oh my God, it's this room here is so beautiful, and you try to take a picture of you, and you look beautiful, and for some fucking reason it doesn't quite click, but all the kind of ingredients are there, and you don't know what. And you have to be honest to the person. You say, I don't quite know how to do it right now, and let's just have a coffee, or let's just have a cigarette, or go for a little walk, and then try again. And through this conversation, through this openness, and I think it's about showing a certain vulnerability within yourself to be open. I can be a clown in front of behind the camera, and of course I'm the director of the whole scenario, and you have to show your vulnerability of being a human being, photographing another human being.
Yeah, it's interesting listening to you describe that, because I spent a lot of time sitting for my father, who was an artist, and when things went wrong, I think my great lesson from him was when something goes wrong, you don't give up. You persevere, however you do that.
Yes, and for things to go to, I think that is really the point. You kind of try. You kind of think, oh, I think that could be really good. And when you outspoken that idea of what you think you're gonna do, it might, when you outspeak it, it might sound ridiculous or stupid. But actually, when you then work on it, and you have to learn from your mistakes of, like, you say, well, that didn't quite work, but through this working process, something else comes along which does make it work, and it drifts to the left or to the right, and you always have to, if we're talking about portraiture or photographing someone, you know, I'm very dependent and I want to be dependent on the subject, on the person I photograph. You know, if somebody is more extrovert, like let's say Kristen McManamy, the pictures are going to be more extrovert. If somebody is more shy, it will be a more of a sweeter, shy photograph. Obvious. I would never ask anybody to do something which I felt morally or wouldn't fit to that person. That would be ludicrous. And I think you have to be. It's a lot about psychology. You have to be very clever and very sensitive and very sharp of where you want to be, this thing to be going towards.
It's interesting because you seem to be able to bring your subject into the solution if things, for some reason, aren't coming out how you want it. And I like the way you describe, you know, giving them an opportunity somehow to be involved in that. And when I used to sit for my dad, I'd be hyper aware when things went wrong, because he'd get incredibly agitated and sometimes stab himself in the leg with his paintbrush. But I knew there was nothing I could do except for sort of will myself to be as good a subject. And sometimes I'd say, should we have a cup of tea or something? Just trying to gauge how I could just move it out of that trapped in time moment where everything seemed to be going wrong into the next moment when there was somehow some movement.
That's really part of it, not to be afraid of time and of failure and of letting it be, and it's really difficult. It is really painful, and every time I'm nervous. You know, it's because every time is a new thing, every time is a new situation. It's a new scenario, whether it's sunny or rainy or whatever. And it's really nerve-wracking. It's really because I don't have of course, let's say I have a very strong idea, but I let that be quite open and fluid, and I can react very quickly to change that if something doesn't work. You know, I'm not. I don't have a storyboard or look at some old photographs and trying to copy that. You know, I'm trying to do my own thing.
Yeah.
And that is nerve-wracking. But I have a excellent partner in crime with me now, because it's my wife, and she's always with me, and she keeps me calm, and she through her I'm getting better and better.
Yeah, it's a big deal being so nervous, because feeling so nervous that it could paralyze you is always the big kind of threat. But nerves are so great as well, because, you know, they propel you. But
of course, if you're blasé, forget about it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I often find if I'm really nervous, my adrenaline goes so crazy that I become very, very slow, and then that makes me really panicky. and I have to try some other techniques to, you know, be speedy and not feel this syrupy kind of awful, like quicksand.
Right, right.
I feel I'm going to disappear into. You're often naked in your self-portraits, and I wondered how come. I mean, my dad used to paint a lot of naked portraits, and then he would do naked self-portraits as well. And I wondered if you used the nakedness as a start of a new phase of work.
Well, it's really just a small part of my whole repertoire of interest. I did a lot of fashion photography and photographed a lot of actors and celebrities and people. And in about 2000, I got a bit tired and bored of the vanity of people to a certain extent. And I just, out of pure interest, I thought, how would it be to photograph yourself? I wanted to feel how it feels like to be photographed by myself. And it was an exercise I did, and you know, and I have been photographing fashion to a certain extent, quite a bit, and I didn't want to deal with any kind of clothes and things, and I kind of wanted to be as natural and pure as possible, and that meant being naked, and there wasn't anything else, and apart from that, I really like the skin color, any kind of skin color, whether it's and I like the flesh, and I like the fat, and I like the muscles, and I like the veins, and I like it's like I like photographing a tree, you know. It's all amazing, and for me, it all doesn't make any difference whether I'm as much excited as photographing a tree than my mother, my wife, my children, a fashion photograph, like a cookbook I might be doing, or anything. You know, if my interest lies in whatever it is. I just got commissioned by the Vatican to photograph the Pope, and
God, really?
Yes,
I love the Pope.
And that was super exciting. You know, he didn't ask for any retouching. So there you go. And I just worked on a book. I got commissioned by the International Auschwitz Committee to photograph Auschwitz, and that was a life-changing experience actually for my wife and me to go there and spend 3 days. I've been there once in '97 already, and. Coming back to these naked self-portraits, it just gives me I wanted to feel like how it is to be photographed by myself, and it really helped me to be, whether it's naked in the forest, whether it's cold, how long can you withstand something in weather condition or without some model complaining when it's 18 degrees and it's a little bit cold, or it puts things in perspective for me and pushes me, and when people seen some people who I showed the photographs, it really helped me to go even further. I showed the pictures to Charlotte Rampling, and she said, yeah, that's what you're doing, okay, and it helped me to go further with other people too.
Yeah.
Because I do it to myself. I mean it in a very much positive way.
To know what kind of a journey you can invite someone to go
for
on.
example, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have any phobias?
My wife is asking me to pay for plastic surgery. I don't know. I'm sure she won't, because she is as beautiful as she is.
And you worked a lot with Vivienne Westwood, who I started my kind of journey in fashion with her, and she's quite a critical person, And I wondered how you connected with her to find what she wanted from the campaigns that you did together.
I really loved Vivienne, and I really love Andreas, her husband, and I worked with her probably 30 years ago, and for her company, and then French Vogue asked me to photograph her, and it was one of my first assignments for this Condé Nast adventure. And Vivienne said, "This is the most sexiest picture of anybody ever taken of her," and it made me so proud. And it's black and white, which is unusual for me. And she sits with sort of ripped stockings, with these sort of high, I don't know what you call them, these high heels, these
the rocking horseshoes or
something like that.
Yeah.
And she sits there, and I thought she was so incredibly beautiful, and had such a great aura around her. And then afterwards, we worked together for ID magazine, and I said to them, "You know what? I think I should be shooting your campaigns." And I'd never done that before, ever. I never asked for work, ever. But I only would do it, forget about other people and things like that. I think you should always be in your own campaigns. And Andreas, you too. And then, of course, we had other people involved in it.
Yeah.
And so that was the first time when actually Vivienne and Andreas were in their own campaigns. And then Vivienne, of course, being super pragmatic and funny, was like, "Andreas, he's right. It's cheaper that way as well." But for me, it just made complete sense. And we had a wonderful journey together all these years. Like for 20 years, I've been doing their campaigns, or longer, I don't know what. And it's always something new, and it's always inspiring. And I never had any difficulties with Vivienne. She kind of like ate out of my finger, out of my hands. She really trusted me, and she really believed in me. And there was another thing which I normally also never really do that much at all. I mean, I don't do many nudes at all. People think I do, but actually, maybe because they are known, but I don't really do so many at all. But as because I've been photographing her for so many years in all these clothes and everything, and I think she is so wonderful looking, and so special looking, and so bright and intelligent, and what she's. A political engagement, and she had this orange hair, and she had this white skin. I just said to her husband, "I would love to do some nudes with her." And she was about 68 years old, I believe, at the time, and I was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe what I've said." I'm far too shy to say these things, but I said it to Andreas, who's her husband and my friend, and he's, "Oh my God, you should. I'm going to ask. I think that's a great idea." And then Vivienne said, "Oh my God, I never thought about that. I would love to see these photographs myself." And
lovely.
Oh my God, I was shitting myself in my pants. I was so nervous when it came down to it. So went down, to her house in Battersea, and then she made some lunch for us and everything. And I was like took ages. And she says, "So when are you taking your camera out? Let's do it." And then she's just stripped naked and sat there with her legs wide open, full blown, full on. I was like, "Oh my God, this is excellent. This is beautiful." And I'm really proud of these photographs, and Vivienne too. And I had them in my show at the ICA in London, and they were really large. They were like, let's say, 80 by 100 inches like huge prints, right?
Yeah.
3 of them as a triptych. And people said to me, "Oh my God, I wonder what, have you even thought of what Vivienne's gonna think about this? Being so huge and everything." So she comes in at the opening and somebody asked her about that. And then she said, "I think they could be bigger." I have very, very fond memories of Vivienne.
Yeah. God, she was so great. I
Yeah.
mean, she made everything go further, didn't she? I mean,
Yes.
I was so useless when I worked for her. I made so many mistakes and was really unreliable. But she was a mixture of very exacting and very patient.
Mm.
And she was such a good teacher. I mean, she'd been a teacher. And,
Yes, yes. She's very teachery.
Yeah.
Very teachery.
Did she?
But she was also incredible, beautiful, naive, and playful. And that's, I think, where we connected to kind of go on something which we haven't seen or want to do and things. And, yeah.
Yeah, because she was there were very few people that she completely trusted or just
Yes.
kind of was unconditional with. And but when she chose that person, they had everything from her. So
Yes.
did she teach you something in particular, do you think?
I'm not sure in particularly, but I think just to be another notch of being confident of being yourself.
Yeah.
And doing what you really believe in and what you're doing and being consequent about it.
Yeah.
That's all. When you meet good people, that's all they can give. That's what they give you. You know? That's wonderful.
Yeah, she did. She instilled that.
Mm.
But she did it in a kind of, now everyone is so considerate, which is very nice as well. And she didn't have that style.
Mm.
She just expected a lot of you. And so it made you rise to the occasion, even if you fell over loads of times doing it. But, she raised the bar.
Yes,
she
of
showed
course.
you what was possible. And, that I'm indebted to her for that.
Mm.
You said that everything is a self-portrait in some way, and I wondered, like, when you photograph a very sort of amazing young model, what part of yourself you're revealing then?
I have to admit, what you're saying now, that seems a bit far-fetched now, in a way. But what I meant to say is like the way I see the world, the way I my opinion is that if you see a whole body of work, a project I'm doing that I would see as a self-portrait. I mean, if I just photograph a young girl, that's a bit difficult to say that's kind of a self-portrait, but it's the attitude I have with how it might look or whatever.
Mm. Also, I suppose there's a tenderness within that picture that is part of you. It doesn't seem that far-fetched at all, really, even though it sounds a bit of a cliche coming from me.
I mean, I never thought of if I do photograph a young, beautiful model, it's brutally speaking, it's just a job. It's a job who I want to do very well. If it would be a young, beautiful model, it would be, then I would photograph my daughter or somebody's friend's daughter or something. But if we talk about models, it's an assignment. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I was looking at your Balenciaga campaign and that young athlete who's so kind of delicate looking. And why did you decide to choose her? I mean, she's obviously totally remarkable, so I suppose that's your reason. But there's this feeling of incredible strength that comes from her, this tiny, delicate person.
Well, sometimes within, if you do some fashion advertising, you discuss with the client who you should be thinking would be good for promoting that product, and sometimes the me or the photographer have a say, or and then sometimes that's who I have to photograph. You see what I mean? And but I like Balenciaga very much, and they have a very good. I like them. I think they're probably the most modern outlook on forward thinking of fashion for me, to a certain extent, on a wider scale of what you can see on the street wearing, and I like that, and it's been excellent fun. It's been really fruitful and good working with them, and they very clearly wanted to have something from me in it.
Yeah.
And Deville and me, we worked really hard on it, and it was just really good what we ended up doing.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. Looks very real. I mean, it looks very like a natural collaboration.
Yeah, sometimes you photograph these fashion and you never see them in the street. You're thinking, where is all this happen? Where is this all going? I'm not a fashion expert per se, but in terms of Balenciaga, I like how it gets, how high fashion can be translated into a normal world, and I like that.
Yeah, that's a real accomplishment, I think.
Yeah, very rare.
It's true. And brutally honest, what does that mean to you? And what about hurting people? Does that worry you?
I know I must have said that, brutally honest. It only refers to hurting someone. It only refers to myself and to my mother. I never hurted anyone. I never. There was just one photograph I wanted to do, and I executed it, and I kind of wanted to. I never had a good relationship with my father, and as you said before, he was an alcoholic, and he never talked to me, and my mother liked sport, so we had that football thing very much in common, and anyway, to fast forward, I did a photograph because I wanted to be closer to my father, and I didn't want to hate him. And he killed himself, and it was when I was 24 years old, and for many years I carried around this sort of heaviness and sort of what an arsehole he was and everything else, and I remembered when I was a late teenager or something, I was hitchhiking to Italy, and the only time in my life when my father was talking to me, he says, "I want to give you something," and I'm like, "What the fuck are you giving me? What the fuck are you talking to me now?" And he wanted to hand me his beloved camera, and because he was an enthusiastic photographer early in his years. And of course, I completely rejected it. And I was like, what the fuck? I'm like, first of all, I was 16 years old or something. I didn't want to schlep a camera with me. It's like, I wanted to be free. I wanted to be as far away as possible, away from this village next to the woods where I come from. I wanted to go away. And I didn't want to carry anything. And then years after, I remembered, and I'm thinking, my God, he would have given me that already then, and you slowly think of some positive thoughts about your father, and I kind of wanted to do a self-portrait on my father's grave, and I was naked because it didn't make any sense because he's just bones down there. And I had a cigarette in my hand and beer, because I do drink myself, not like my father, but and I was standing resting on a football, and it was an extremely important photograph, and people misunderstand that photograph, and it's fine if people misunderstand that photograph to a certain extent, and some people don't. But it was a really honest feeling of being emotional, close to my father. There's like the football represents my mum, the beer and cigarettes represent my father, which I also have these addictive, more or less, scenarios with this scenario. And it was an extremely powerful photograph, and it was very important to me. And I was and I did it, of course, where he was at his grave, and I was working on a book, and I had later on when I visited again my mother, and I had the kind of platter proof of the book in my suitcase, and my mother opened the suitcase because she wanted to do some washing for me, and she seen this fucking photograph, and we had a really hardcore conversation about it. And of course she was, as you said, she was extremely hurt. And I had to be brutally honest that I need to have this photograph published. I need to have this photograph published. But because of this action of doing these photographs, my relationship with my mother, and through this endless talking about it got us a lot closer. So through pain, you have a conversation, and it might be painful, but you come to a more closeness of whoever you have this with, and it's absolutely needed. And it was very, very difficult for my mother, and she was begging me not to publish it. But after a while, I said, I'm going to fucking publish this anyway. I have to. Like your dad would have done it too, in that way. You know what I mean? And she was like, that is the thing. She understands. She understood. But she says, what about if I go to the butcher in the village?
Yeah.
To the baker? What are they going to say?
Yeah.
And so it's a double problematic, you know? So that is the only time I hurt someone.
Gosh.
And otherwise, I guess you didn't expect this, where this question is going. But otherwise, I'm incredibly sensitive of what people would be willing to go with or not, you know.
So interesting you talking about, your father and the lack of closeness, and because we were talking before about Karl Ove Knausgaard and his relationship with his father, who didn't commit suicide per se, but he drank himself to death in this extreme way and lived in this extreme squalor. And I was just so... somehow how you can redeem your relationships with your parents even when they're dead. And it's difficult always to show that it's well-intentioned, because part of it is by showing it at all. But it's very... it takes you through the mirror into a new place, which is essential to kind of go into the next phase of life, I find.
Some people, are not capable of facing the mirror. And I think this is my only strength of learning or dealing with difficulties and being stronger and learning from mistakes and doing that. And I think it's we work very, very, very similar, Karl Ove and me, in a lot of respect. And I do some writing too, and he read my writings. I was with him in Sweden for 2 days, and we had wonderful conversations, and I really enjoyed his time and his reading. It's really about being brave and brutally honest within the world, and there's sadness, there's happiness, there's sunshine, and there's rain, and there's fog, and everything is in a way happy and melancholic and everything. I don't want to just paint it would be boring if everything would be sunshine.
Yeah.
Then you get skin cancer, and then you are sad.
Yeah, the whole kind of subject of happiness is so subjective anyway, isn't it?
Yes.
And can I ask you, if you fancy someone and you don't like what they're wearing, does it kill your attraction?
I never thought of this. In which way attractive?
I think
Deeply attractive, or just like sexual pleasure attractive? I mean, you should have seen what my wife was wearing when she was living in New York. Now I'm telling her what to wear.
that was going to
If that's the answer where we're going. I'm just kidding.
I was going to ask you also if you've ever told someone how you want them to dress and what you ask them to wear.
No, I'm very, 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 very open. Sometimes I agree to my wife's strange footwear choices and things, but she always, she always asks me for advice. So it's a very loving thing.
Mm-hmm. And you quite often wear shorts, but you wear the very short satiny ones, not the dad shorts that's practically become a uniform for most men. And it's quite a provocative look, and I wondered what effect you wanted it to have.
It's like I never do anything for effect, Well, in my, like people ask me, "Oh, do you want to shock with your photographs?" I'm like, no, this is a completely wrong end of the stick. People think that, I just first of all, the shorts are because they suit me. I have very short legs, and they make my legs look good when the shorts are short. It's quite, everything is really quite simple and has a reason why things are that. I got them first from American Apparel, remember?
Yeah, they were great.
And it's basically, I'm that age, I grew up in these shorts. That's how I played football in. That was the length of these shorts, and that's how it was, All this other stuff came later, and we're talking about shorts, so they are short. It's quite straightforward. They're not. Otherwise, you should say medium trousers or something.
No, it's such a good thing to know that they suit you, and that's all you need to know.
Yes.
And then to wear them, and people get into the habit of
wearing the same thing.
Yeah. And seeing you in those particular things.
I mean, for me, it's in terms of what I'm wearing, it has to be practical, just because of what I do and how I am. I don't like. I really hate when people tell you what to wear, like these sort of dress code scenarios of certain parties and things like that. I cannot do this.
I love that.
Yeah, people like that. It's totally fine. But for me, it's like a nightmare. If somebody tells me what to do, I have a problem with authority in a way.
You've made a good use out of it, haven't you?
Yeah, thanks.
And your pictures, they have such an anarchic feeling of force, and you've also talked about being depressed as well. And when that happens, can you feel it coming on, and what happens to you when you get down?
It just comes and you can't explain it. and you think the life is all good and everything, and it's just like kind of something is depressing. But it has a combination of really don't quite know right now what to do within your work. What is your next subject? And you're kind of doodling along with sort of work which isn't quite there, and it becomes incredibly frustrating, and you and that is depressing when you don't know what to do, when you don't know how to what kind of new work you should be expanding on, and then I get used to get quite depressed, and then you kind of like have to let go. You completely let go when you try really hard and it doesn't work. It gets worse and worse and worse, and then there's always a moment when you let go, and then something from life comes and gives you new inspiration. And this thankfully hasn't happened for a long time. I'm kind of like a fountain of energy.
That's great.
And which is together with my wife. We do so much work now. We just constantly work, and it's super fun, and I have so many ideas, and it's just like and I've shown so many shows planned and books and things, and it's just excellent, and I'm so happy we're doing this together, and we inspire each other, and it's just brilliant. And every morning I make her coffee.
So nice.
See? People think I'm hard. I'm romantic.
Well, thank you so much, Juergen Teller, for being on Fashion Neurosis. It's been so interesting to talk to you.
Pleasure.